Adam, it's Robert Davis here in Puerto Rico. I called you a few days ago and we set up a time for us to speak on the phone. My name is Robert Davis. Huh. Sure, absolutely. Sure, no problem. Are you with me now? Are you with me now? Yeah, it's amazing the power of social media. I just created a Facebook group to raise some money for the Taino Indian artifacts they're finding on the old Navy base. And they have, and my group just went from 11 to 31 in about 2 hours. So anyway, yeah, I hope I'm not taking up too much of your time, but I just had like 3 specific things I want to discuss with you, if you have some time. Okay, so first off, let me just ask you how things are going with the task force. Okay. Do you have an opinion on this proposal by Stanley Morgan, another $2 billion? Okay. Okay, so I guess I'll share with you, as a result of living and working here in Puerto Rico for the last 3 years, after having grown up here from the first grade and been in a military school on the base, and then living off the base in high school in the towns of Ceiba and Humacao. So I have 2 different lives in Puerto Rico, so I have a very interesting perspective now that I've been here living 3 years, almost fully fluent now, although I still have a lot of challenges. So I've narrowed it down to, I've got a list of about 10 things that I specifically think can help the economy. And but I just wanted to talk to you about the first 3 that I've worked on. But I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same stuff, because the article in the Caribbean News, it quotes, the federal advisors are concentrating on 3 fronts: fiscal strategy, optimization of federal funding, and economic development. So I'm able to talk to you about economic development, right? Okay. Right? Okay. All right, so I have 3 specific things, and the first 2 are the problems, and the third thing is a new program that's a potential solution to almost everything on my list, okay? So, in my opinion, the number 1 problem in Puerto Rico is the communications. Okay, so just to give you an example, right now, I'm sitting outside in the community clubhouse because I don't have a cell phone signal inside one of the beach condos that I rent out as part of one of my businesses for vacation rentals. Okay? So if I had to pick one area to focus in on for economic development as a businesses and support, it would be communications, like landline telephones and cable and wireless internet access, and then better cell phone signals. And just to give you another anecdote about the problems with the communications, last summer I went working with the owner of a small hotel in Ponce, which is on the south coast. It's the 2nd biggest town in Puerto Rico, the 2nd biggest metropolitan area. It was founded in like 1693. Okay? Now, Puerto Rican Telephone Company, I think was part of the Puerto Rican government, had been installing landline telephones since anybody can remember, up until the 80s or the 90s, when it changed to Puerto Rican Claro. They changed the name, just like AT&T changed their name, Ma Bell changed their name, Puerto Rican Telephone changed their name to Claro. Last summer, when I called Claro to get a landline telephone line installed, they could not make it happen. I was right in the middle of the urban business district in a residential small hotel guest house. They were unable to install the landline, And in order to get the cable internet access, I needed that landline, and they could not install it. Spent like 6 weeks in the summer. The technician came out multiple times, could not get it installed. But I really want to get to the third topic. I want to use up most of the time to explain an ambassador program for every single one of the districts or municipalities around the island, so that people have a place to go to speak to a representative from the federal government to help their issues, like the communications. And then the second thing on my list is real estate reform. You know, I don't know how well aware you are of the abandoned and foreclosed properties all around the island. And many of the houses that have been built here on the island since 1970, there is no title. And if you've ever bought and sold a home in Washington, D.C., you get title insurance. They don't have title insurance in Puerto Rico. None of the real estate brokers even knows what that means. And so these abandoned buildings that are tied up in inheritance laws is like one of the number one problems with the Puerto Rican economy, because people they can't buy and sell homes because they don't have the title. And then also, under that category of real estate reform, we need government programs where we get special loans, grants, lottery systems, so that the federal government land is awarded back to the people of Puerto Rico, a lot like what they do in Hawaii. And we need a government program dedicated to all the abandoned urban buildings, the abandoned schools, and then I got on the list small farms, medium farms, and large farms. But those are two specific major problems that we have. And if you're still with me, I want to talk about this ambassador program. Okay, so nobody really has a place to go here on the island for information. You know how the Peace Corps, they send English-speaking people who have access to education and the modern information media, grants, and all these programs. They send them to Africa to serve in the Peace Corps. Okay, we need a Commonwealth of Puerto Rico ambassador program just like that for the 37 districts. Okay, if you look at there are 37 senators, and there are 37 districts, and there's like 2 representatives for the legislature for each district. Now, if we could dedicate $100,000 for the pilot programs per district, and I'm proposing the East Coast because that's what I'm mainly interested in, Fajardo, Ceiba, Naguabo, and then Vieques and Culebra, those islands combined. If we could recruit an ambassador, an English-speaking educated ambassador, or an international representative to come representing the United States and all the federal programs and grants and loans that are available, like the HUD program, Section 8 housing. If we had an office that opened in the town of Naguabo, right, there would be another job, because then we would have the U.S. ambassador of Naguabo opening an office, putting an American flag, and then he would be hiring a staff member who would be primarily, hopefully, Puerto Rican, and then he would train that person as a secretary or as a vice ambassador to do everything that he does for like a 3 to 4 year tenure. And his 4th year would be completely dedicated to either deciding to stay for another 3 years or recruiting somebody to take his place, because human resources in Puerto Rico is the number one one of the number one problems, because all these businesses and medical clinics that I know of closed because nobody is recruited to take the place. So once you have an ambassador coming into every one of these municipalities, and then the people from the street and the communities have a place to go to talk to somebody about maybe Social Security or medical programs, how to get funding for their farms. It's a hugely agrarian farming community, and these people, none of them have an education, and the mass majority of them don't have an education. Most people don't know what Wi-Fi even means or have access to the information on the internet, even before we talk about the lack of the access. So then you would have the ambassador, his staff, and he would have to buy a house, which would obviously start impacting real estate, because then the ambassador would immediately begin to understand some of the complexities that the people, the voters of Puerto Rico, who potentially could become in a year or two, or whatever the timeline is, voters in the United States congressional and presidential elections, these people would finally have a person to talk to about, on a very third world, old school level, what the U.S. government can do for them. A 37 district ambassador program, start 1 year, $100,000. The ambassador going to be paid $20,000 a year. The ambassador would be required to make a profit, to get more money, to get more grants, because he would be stimulating the economy, hopefully, paying for his own salary. I mean, I've got a lot of outrageous ideas, and to consider a government employee has to run a program to make a profit. But that's another crucial component to Puerto Rico, is that people have to learn that in order to survive in business or in this community, and they just can't be taking all the time, that they have to have mechanisms, fundraisers and grant programs, so that we can do houses for humanity, habitats for humanity, and all the other educational and youth programs that I could spend the rest of the next 3 days talking about. So that's the end of my little presentation. All right, Adam, thanks so much. Bye-bye.